how do Messianic believers hold on to their beliefs while dealing with changes in laws and culture that are becoming more accepting of people belonging to LGBTQ? What we'll do is, you have you're the primary respondent, reporter, and Joel, you will be the secondary respondent. Is the question clear now?
I think so. What do we do as believers in response to laws in governments that might not align with our faith, particularly in response to subjects such as this law? Well, it very much depends in what land, country, under what regime we live. Depending on the kind of government, the kind of regime, if it is a totalitarian type of regime, it's not much you can do. And that is likely the reason behind Paul's famous writings to the Romans, where he encouraged the people, encouraged the followers of Messiah to be obedient to the government, to indeed be good citizens, recognizing that God has given them the sword and they yield it over you. If you're a good citizen, it should be okay. If you're not a good citizen, too bad for you. Well, that has been wrongly applied to modern circumstances of when people live in democratic countries. And when living in a democratic country, it's a very different circumstance. It's a very different situation. If one lives in a country where there is a process of representation of the people in government, if there is a process of voting within a voting cycle, then we have a responsibility. The individual citizen has a responsibility to make your voice known if laws are being passed or has been passed that are in opposition to biblical, moral, and ethical truths. If it is passed, yes, we have to abide by the law, but we have the right and we have the obligation and responsibility to resist and fight appropriately. Of course, not violently, unless civil war would actually break out. Within the structure, within the framework of the land we live in, if we have a degree of liberty, then we have responsibility that comes with liberty, and that is to respond appropriately against immoral laws. Otherwise, it's a biblical virtue to be abiding by the law of the land. And if the law of the land, according to Jewish rabbinic Judaism, often might supersede even biblical law, as long as it is not against the principles and morals of biblical law. And that in relationship to homosexuality, in biblical law, you might remember, such individuals to be stoned. Well, under modern liberal secular law, that's no longer the case. We do not stone individuals. But does that mean that we are to be in support of homosexuality's right to marriage? Well, that's a whole other situation altogether. Does that mean that marriage is meant to be an institution for the birthing and raising of children as good citizens for the land, for the civilization? And that is meant to be and must be with a father and with a mother. That, of course, is not gender confused. And I'll make one last point along those lines. When there is the liberty and the freedom to have one's rights protected, that is in direct contrast to these kinds of laws, such as the what's it called? Soji, thank you. Soji laws, where a person who is confused concerning their gender, which is obviously a mental illness, requiring other people who are not mentally disturbed concerning one's physical, biological reality, they should not have the right to impose that illness on others. That if they want to have that equality, well then it comes at the cost of actual equality. And that is to not impose their viewpoints onto others. So it depends on circumstances as to where do we live.
Let me just read this, John, because it's related, and you can make it part of your response. Even though LGBTQ we all know is wrong, should we still respect them as human beings? Is it right to be homophobic towards LGBTQ? Is it okay to be friends with them? Why? So, ikabit mo na lang doon sa mga tanong.
Alright, so for the first question, you have to educate yourselves. We have to educate ourselves. Not just of the things of Torah or Bible principles, but also of the science behind these things. Because they use science, or they have their own sources to defend their philosophy or their ideology. But actually, science is on our side on this one, because in the DSM-4, DSM-4 is the one in the psychology, world of psychology. It was called gender identity disorder. So it's actually a disorder in DSM-4. And then it became gender dysphoria, medyo lesson description in DSM-5. But it's the same thing. It's still a mental condition. It's still a mental disorder. They just made it lighter something. So similar to bulimia, anxiety, and depression, which need medical attention. So it's not something. So if you're educated on that aspect, so people with these behaviors, specifically transgender people, they're the ones with that kind of mental condition, we have to be understanding. So there's an aspect of they have no control. There's an aspect of they did not choose to have that kind of condition. But that doesn't mean they have to continue in that condition. So anyone with that condition needs medical help. So they have to be brought to the experts on the field and how they can be helped. Unfortunately, in the modern society, the way they help the person with this condition is change the biology. Let the biology fit the mental condition. It doesn't fit. It doesn't work that. It's not supposed to work that way. You help the mental condition to fit the body so that it will coincide with the biology. You cannot fight with biology. You will never win if you fight with biology. So you will. Many of those with these conditions, we know that they don't live that long, so they will still continue to have suicidal tendencies, and they will have sicknesses and illnesses as they grow. Okay, so that's the first thing. Start with yourself, educate yourself, and then we both love Jordan Peterson. Listen to him, right? Yeah, he has a lot of teachings about this, so that's a first step. And then educate your family. So it starts from you. And then educate your family, you still have control over that. And then, as a community, you talk about it, discuss it, gather information, then you discuss among yourselves how you can make a rebuttal of these kinds of theologies or philosophies. And then get wider into your workplace. I wasn't able to present my PowerPoint because it's there. We have a movement in Lapu-Lapu City, we call it Made by Design movement. That's one way we try to combat this movement of SOGI in our area. We as school administrators, we really gathered, we discussed this, and then we really made a manifesto, we made a position paper, we made a PowerPoint presentation, which we use in our schools, and then we teach the teachers about this, and then we maintain our position. And then we will do our best, no matter what it takes, because we don't want well, with God's help, with God's help. These are Christian administrators in Lapu-Lapu City. And then we sent letters to Congress, sent letters to senators on our position. So in that, those are ways where we can do something so far, no? At least in our democratic society, we can still do those things. And in one way or another, it affected the outcome of the bill because the latest bill, which is SB 1600, there are slight changes. And there's a sudden change of tone with Senator Risa Ontiveros because in 2019, or was it 2021, 2020, when there was the first hearing about this, there was it was an intense hearing because religious groups really stood up for their beliefs. And then recently, they kept saying, okay, don't worry, religious institutions and religious groups may continue to uphold their beliefs. That's what she said. Well, sometimes they say it's different with what the senator says and what the society, how society will apply it, or how the policemen will apply the law, or in practice, sometimes it might change. In your workplace, if you cannot take it any longer, you might need to resign, right? If it's your own business, you can still stand your ground. Like what happened in the US, a baker has a business and he did not want to provide cake for the wedding of a same-sex marriage. So he was sued by the homosexual couple. So he fought a case in court. Then I can't remember if the owner of the bakery is a male or a female, but whoever that person is, that person won the case. But I don't know if it's the same for other cases. So maybe sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. When you keep the faith, you just keep fighting for it. Now, for the second question, obviously, all humans are valuable in the sight of God. They all have rights. And we have basic rights, all of us. We know that right to life, liberty and property, education, right? You cannot deny anybody those rights. You cannot deny them. Now, with regards to homophobia, that word is being used, and also transphobia. Those words are being used freely nowadays. Even if you are not scared of gay, lesbian, and transgender people, just because you are not in agreement with them, you're already called a homophobe or a transphobe. But we are not. When you say homo or something, homophobia, when you say phobia, you are scared of them or their effect on you or your life. But we are not scared of them, are we? No. Who's scared of them? None of us are scared of them, right? Sometimes he is, sometimes they can, like drag queens, they hit on him, yeah. So that's different, right? And there's already a threat there. But just their existence should, we are not really scared of them, okay? So yes, we do not engage in homophobia, transphobia, and I don't think we are, but although they are accusing us of homophobia or transphobia. But if they hate us for who we are, then they are the ones who are heterophobes, right? So I think that's it for now for that question.
I would like to respond to the same question from a biblical standpoint. I would like to respond to the same question from a biblical standpoint, in that it is very difficult to figure out what to do. If it seems as though the Torah's command is very anti, how can I be embracing? If it is a Torah principle, as Joel has stated, that each individual is created in the image and likeness of God, and now if such an individual appears to have something that is not right, meaning how can I know it's not right if it cannot bring forth future seed, something that is not right? So what do I do? How do I respond? Am I to alienate such a person? Do I push a person outside of a faith community? Is a faith community embracing or pushing away? This is very difficult and very important, and we base our decision based on our interpretation and application of the commandment. In this case, there is one. And this is written in your syllabus as well. So, but I will briefly refer to Leviticus chapter 18, verse 22. And this interpretation, I've been convinced by Torah commentator Dennis Prager. He's changed my opinion on this matter. It reads that Et zachar lo tishkav bishkavei isha to'eva hi. Clear? Good. Understood. Moving on. You shall not lie with a male as with a woman. It is an abomination. If we want to be as literal and careful as possible, which is really necessary in our modern circumstance, our modern situation, it doesn't actually say a homosexual is an abomination. Now, we can divide cases into two categories. People either say, I was born this way, I always felt this way. Other people say, I started feeling this way as a teenager or in my early 20s or something, or I started feeling this way after being sexually abused or along those lines. So there's different variants. The commandment is not against the individual in their orientation. The commandment is against your action, your sexual activity. The sexual activity is in regards to a male lying with another man as though with a woman. Right? That the sexual act itself, that is what the commandment is focused on and dealing with and addressing. So the commandment is against inappropriate sexual activity, as is the case for the whole of the chapter. The whole of the chapter is addressing and identifying what is inappropriate and therefore harmful sexual activity, whether it's incest, whether it is rape, whether it is the relative, thank you, or homosexual, with an animal, or with between two males. So, therefore, an application of this, as unpopular as that application might be, is that homosexual males are being required to practice sexual restraint just as much as an adult is required to practice restraint towards a minor, as a married man is towards a married woman, as is a human being towards an animal, and so forth. All of the listed sexual behaviors that is going to be destructive to the family and therefore the society, we are being requested and required to practice sexual restraint. Historically, there has been various ways in which this has been done, but it is a critical principle. Just because I feel a certain way does not give me the license to act on my feeling. And that is one of the biblical principles of Judaism, is a religion of restraint. And that restraint, the ability to practice restraint, is the test of liberty, personal liberty. I am in control of myself. So that is how I would suggest, in agreement with Dennis Prager, that the commandment is focused on the act, not the individual. The individual, therefore, must be addressed as an individual, created in the likeness of God, and for each individual in the likeness of God, no matter what the sin may be, there is hope. Is that not what we put our trust in the gospel for? For all of us to have hope, and hope of transformation. And that opens a whole other conversation.
Okay, we are out of time. And I'm looking at the program MC, and I have some pahabol questions, and there's still one more question also, I think related to LGBTQ. So if you're looking at your program, after session 7, it says APNF leaders meeting. I think that we can cut this down to 30 minutes, and we can spend the 30 minutes to deal with these other questions that are here on now. So I think that is how we're going to cover that. Okay, Mr. Afternoon,